up above, got a link to the Tartaria materials, as well as the link to tomorrow's space Chris and I will be doing on the AI Film Festival out in Arizona, Glendale, Arizona, to be specific. That actually started today, right? Or does it start tomorrow? It starts tomorrow, and then it goes through Friday and then into Saturday. So hopefully we'll be chatting with some folks that either are there or couldn't make it, like us, and discussing some of the projects and things like that as well. There is a link to this week's podcast, which was the recording session from 2 weeks ago. Do this every 2 weeks, talk and shop, hanging out, discussing writing, writing, publishing, and authorship. I've been kind of running around today. I haven't done any writing as it is today. Need to have a look at my notes before too long. I need to be wrapping up Volume 3 of Exploring Our National Parks. It's very close to done. It's mostly laid out. I just need to finish the last chapter. I've been kind of poking at it over the last couple of weeks, so it's almost there. I thought I would be done by now, but I'm not, and I still got a little bit of time. My back's not against the wall yet. Next week is the red zone. Gotta absolutely get it pushed out next week, if not before then. Everybody's welcome to come up. I sent invites. Blacklight, I'll send you an invite. It's cool. We're just hanging out. I'm going over the beginning stuff, but in terms of Volume 3, like I said, I've got one chapter. I'm kind of in that stage of things where I'm kicking back and forth between the digital version and the printed version. I'll write notes and make little edits on that, and it's very close. I've got to just go, nose to the grindstone on it and finish it, and then I'll do the audiobook performance, the reading of that, to kind of round out what's left of that production, edit it later, but do the recording. I kind of use that as a proofing step for my books and things like that. Now I find it to be helpful in general, just to actually pass the words over my lips and make sure that they don't sound goofy. So that'll be coming out. The paperback and ebook will be coming out November 11th. So we're, right around the corner on that stuff. Blacklight, what is up? How are you? What are you doing? What are you working on? Do you want to talk about things you're writing? You are wrapping up your series of videos. I assume tomorrow we'll get the last piece, right?
Tomorrow will be the full film. Starting to write some new stuff, but definitely going to take a little bit of a break after this. It's been an intense month.
Yeah, I don't blame you, dude. That's a lot. I could probably slap some stuff out every day, but you're doing like 3 and 4 minute long episodes. Very much commend you on that. And I'm looking forward to the full thing being out because I want to watch that. I want to see it all composed together. Definitely looking forward to seeing the pieces that I've missed.
Appreciate it. Sorry, I'm eating lunch right now.
That's okay. I just ate something too. So in the meantime, for folks, let's if you want, you can toss up your most recent piece on there, or I'll do it for you. You're eating. I'll help you out. I'll give you a hand. I've got a spare hand. I can do it. That's the music video stuff. Why you got so much stuff on your timeline? Why you make it so difficult on me? I got to find this stuff. Whispers in the Dark. That's the most recent one. We'll toss that up there. People can go digging through manually on their own, should they so choose. Obviously, my favorite one that I saw so far was Quantum Entanglement, I think it was called. If you've got a moment between bites, let's talk about the prep process, what you did in advance, if anything, to get ready for this series. Was there any pre-production that went into this, or are you just ripping daily?
No, I had so I had the initial image, which I saw, and I had the concept in my head, and I knew where I wanted the story to go, and I had really reflected, and I give it to Chris because Chris has been hosting these spaces, with Liana too, about villain and horror, and really your guys' community really gave me a lot of a jumping off point to think about, like, what is horror in the modern age, what is horror to adults. After the fun of Halloween for kids and stuff, you don't really think about, what horror is besides like a fun fright. Um, and so I wanted to tell that story in a progressive manner that, transitions from the childhood horrors that we have, and, those phobias of kids of, monsters under the bed, or the cursed doll, or something so small, urban legends to real life horror, and kind of tie that together. So I knew where I wanted to go with it. I started today's script first, the final script, and then just worked my way backwards. 30 days is a long time, it seems like, to tell a story like that, but I broke it up kind of in sections. So like episodes 1 through 5 were one thing, and then 6 through 10 were another, and just expanded that. And then each day I just kind of worked on the scripts. Each week I kind of, as I was like doing 5 days, I would work out like the theme and like what each of those days would be. So I kind of had a map, but then I would do the individual scripts like each day. So each day, every script, every image, every animation, every soundtrack, every edit. So it has been a labor of love. There's probably 150 hours of work done. The whole thing tomorrow, when it's going to be released, is going to be, I think, over an hour and a half long. So it's been a labor of love, but oh, man, it has been a tough project to complete by myself.
I can imagine. And again, yeah, much respect for turning that out. Even just kind of like flying by your, inspiration and stuff like that still is just like a load of work.
Daunting.
You know what I mean?
I wake up and that's the first thing I think about is like, I got to finish the episode today first before I do anything else. And some days it's like I don't get done until like 9 o'clock at night. So I work like all day, start working on videos in the afternoon, finish them, have dinner, and then just crash and spend the next day like wake up, work, video, wake up, work, video. Even on the weekends, it's been videos. So it's just been it's been nonstop telling this story, and I'm really excited to like make some different art. The hardest part is being stuck into like specific styles and time zones and story that it's been very limiting for me to really hone in and focus. But it's been a good exercise in just like practice and consistency. And you'll see when the full video comes together that my character consistency is like perfect. I have characters in different outfits and in different scenes, and a lot of the things that I really struggled with last month, I've kind of figured out ways to overcome them this month. So it's been a win across the board, even if the whole thing's a dud.
No, that's cool. So what else are you going to do with this? Are you trying to push it out into other spots? I don't know where all you've been publishing. I assume YouTube and Twitter at the least.
Yep, I have them there. I'll have them on Escape. I'm having a Halloween party tomorrow, so the whole point of this initially was to have something I could play in the background of my Halloween party.
That's cool.
But it's kind of turned into something where other people want to show it and stuff, so I'm just going to put it up on YouTube as a little Halloween gift for everybody. And I won't say too much about it, but I am going to leave an opening for more later on if I want to come back to it.
Oh, sequel.
Yeah, it'll be nice.
What about, to ask this, what about putting it out in other formats, or like what other vehicles or channels do you see kind of having potential for the project or the assets that you've created, because you've got a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to Dustin about maybe doing some merch. I have like probably 30,000 stills. So there's a ton of art from this project. It's essentially its own IP. So now I have this intellectual property that I can kind of build off of. The story is open enough that I can expand on it. So I really look at it now, even though it seems like I'm at the finish line, like this really opens the door of like an introduction to really like a whole new world. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what the reception is overall, and then go from there. I mean, I'm not, making viral stuff. I'm not making things that are, chasing any trends. It's purely something completely unique and stands on its own. So people are receptive to it, I'll expand on it. If not, then I'll move on to something else.
Yeah, that's the good part of like making or coming up with stuff and making things. You can kind of do whatever you want with it. When you're trying to pound out something really rapidly, like you've been doing, it can be exhausting because you have to keep going back to the well, and like you've committed yourself to this daily sort of thing. I've done some stuff like that in the past as well. Not anywhere near as ambitious as making a video every day. I don't know if I could do that. I think I would probably kind of lose it somewhere in there. But yeah, being able to have a jumping off point for the future if you want to come back to it, or if you just kind of really like the setting, the environment, the world that you created, being able to keep playing around with it or explore it more. You have all of the time to like let it kind of stew for a while and see what comes out of that when you're not pressured with the daily grind of turning out the videos.
Well, that, and it's also been like the hardest part of this project has been something that needs to be entertaining as an episodic, but also tells a full kind of story. Um, and those two can be conflicting at times. Like I did an episode of a couple days ago. It's literally just an old DOS terminal, and it's two clods talking to each other, which those are going to be used as scene transitions. But in the context of like an individual story, you're like, what is this I'm watching right now? But it doesn't really make sense until you see it in like the broader story. And I think once it's all compiled together, it's going to make a lot more sense to people. And I'm just going to kind of leave it out there and let it marinate like some wine and see what happens with it. But I do like the characters. I do like the world of it, and there's definitely opportunity to expand on it. So I just need a break. I need a day without the whisperer
Yeah,
in my brain.
fair, reasonable. Maybe, yeah. Sometimes, like when you're dealing with stuff like that, something it's just like I got to get away from what this is doing. I need to think other thoughts, or just not be thinking the way that this is requiring me to think. In general.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that I never really understood this. Like, I understand the concept of method acting, and A's had talked about this really early on because I was asking him for like some tips and stuff. And he is the type of person, A's Alters, who I'm referring to, and he has been making his series, and he's like, I live my world, and you have to kind of like live in that space and that music just to kind of be in that character. And this movie is essentially like a descent into madness. And so I've had to live my life essentially that way. My girlfriend's been very patient with me. She came over last night for dinner, and she's like, I'm ready for you to not be so crazy for a month, because it's been, a lot of like habitual things that someone would do, you know what I mean? And just think about, and just going down that rabbit hole and kind of breaking any guardrails that I have about what sanity is and what it means and what being a human means in modern life. So yeah, I could.
Well, luckily you're human for a little while longer, at least.
Until the mind meld takes over.
Something. So for the folks hanging out, if you guys want to come up, smash that button, you can come and talk. You can talk to Blacklight. You can ask him about his project. It doesn't have to be me doing it. To continue on, what are you going to do next? What are you thinking about? Here's maybe even a more specific question. Like, how much writing did you do for this specifically? And like, how much of that might translate into something else?
I wrote every word of it. I wrote all of it. I didn't use ChatGPT to do any of the writing. I did all the writing myself. Um, so I've thought about this. Chris actually brought it up to me maybe last week, that there's legs here of, a novel, a series. It can go a lot of different ways. So I'm really just kind of putting the lore out there. The IP exists, and when I want to come back to it, I can in a lot of different forms. I think after this, I've been exploring doing like AI news broadcasts and AI infomercials. I really enjoyed doing the like infomercials and commercials in this. Um, and I really like parodying late stage capitalism. So I'm exploring some of those ideas. I'm trying to be really cognizant right now because like the election's coming up too, that I'm not trying to put out anything like crazy, um, because I could. I have some stuff that I put out, and I'm like, I don't know if I really want to make these kind of waves yet. So I've tabled some projects, but I'm really interested in doing like more episodic sort of things, just with some more spacing between them. I'm not do like a daily 3-minute thing, but maybe do like a 10-minute episode once a week or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like because you've got, approximately an hour and a half, I would assume when you say you wrote it all that you're talking about the dialogue and the voiceover and stuff like that. But maybe you mean more. And even if you do or you don't, all that stuff to be editorialized, takes a lot of work. And I would say there are probably things that occur within the film, the series, the shorts, that maybe haven't been converted to the page, and then also the way that you would choose to convert them to the page would be, a good exercise. You would probably get a lot of that. If you don't get necessarily a novel, even if you got like a novella out of it or whatever, an interesting way or experiment in conversion that might be worth your time to get something like that out of it. If people have liked it, a lot, or even if they haven't, who cares? It might be just something that you want to do and be able to turn it into an ebook or a paperback release of some kind. I don't know how much dialogue it runs through all of the stuff. I assume a good amount. And like you said before, there are some conflicts. You're going to have to resolve some of that stuff to a degree as you're editorializing. So, that might be a practice, but yeah, I think you've got so much material there. There's certainly more that you could do with it beyond even just,
Yeah,
well,
I thought
here's
about
all
like
these still
diaries
images.
diaries of an algorithm corporation employee, diaries of like a recruit. I've done like a lot of different concept stuff. So like, what's it like to work in a mind melt store? What's it like to work at a distribution center? So yeah, there's different jumping off points to explore that stuff. I just get cautious of like overly saturating an IP with like too much stuff and having more content than demand, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to marvel myself into this situation where I've become like everything that.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily like a major concern you should have. As much as we all see each other's stuff, there's such a huge world out there that you cannot completely predict where this stuff finds itself at the end of each day. And who is going to connect with it on any given day. So, and from what angle too, because some people, again, as I've said in a lot of times, some people are going to watch movies. Some people are only going to watch these shorts. Other people are going to want to read stuff. Other folks are going to get into the pictures. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. And like, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily like worry about being too concerned, like you're oversaturating anything. There's just that there's a lot of corners and avenues and alleyways to go down, and like, you did it on your own, so it's going to take a while to walk all of those and map them out. So yeah, I wouldn't stress about that too much.
Yeah, and I always look at so I do digital marketing for my day job, and essentially what this series has done is just primed an algorithm for my content and just regularly posting, having something consistent, themed, and running. And I think the best part of it comes like after it's released, and it's been out in the world. I mean, I think of albums that get play like years later. This is going to exist on the internet forever now, so it's who knows what happens with it.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Like, I find that stuff as it's kind of floating out there and kind of riding those waves of interest. Yeah, stuff happens. It's hard to predict, and also it's good to have things, a collection of works to be able to jump back to as you're seeing interest kind of develop and stuff like that. It's tough to know on the day that you're releasing something, or particularly like when you're in the trenches of making stuff. It's really hard to predict how it's going to come out at the end.
Yeah, I mean that's the most terrifying part is like doing it, and because I create in a vacuum too, and I don't really think about like, oh, someone's going to see this. And even now, like with the editing of like the final film, I'm like, I don't, I don't know if I saw this the whole way through in my head initially, but this is what's been created. And yeah, it's just that weird fear now. Like once it's done, you're like, okay, well here it is, and it's open to the world to love, hate, or anywhere in between. It's scary as a creator to put yourself out there like that.
I
But
don't
at the
know.
same time, it's like I want to show people something new that's not just like a deep fake or other IP existing in another world. Like I want to show that these tools can actually create something like compelling and real and stir emotion in you and be art that's not an actual rip, of something else, which is I find infinitely harder because you don't have the same feedback loop as something that's going to go viral because you're, you know, making Winnie Pooh in a 1950s Panavision. You know what I mean? Like it's just totally different. And totally unique, and there's not a lot of unique stuff outside of the AI art community now that's kind of broken through. So I hope some of this stuff does.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I think that for every project that kind of gets out there into the world and gains whatever level of traction that it does, it just adds general cultural acceptance for the genre, or that format, whatever terms you want to use. I would say, I, like the tool, like it's funny to think about, like, oh, this tool needs to be accepted. Like it really actually it doesn't. Who cares, to be honest with you? If people dislike some tool set, well, that's like kind of their problem. That's not really my problem. It's not going to stop me from working with the tools. So the things that I make, or whatever that you make, or that come out of the community at large from people making stuff, you really don't have to be concerned with the folks that hate it. And then additionally, that Streisand effect of them being very vocal haters is potentially advantageous in and of itself as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm going to hop back into listening here. I'd love to hear from some more people. I'm in my lunch here. I got to get back to work.
Yeah, no sweat. Yeah, if folks want to
Thanks
come
for
up,
having me, man. It's good to chat about this stuff. It's really interesting. I love talking about writing because I feel like I started as like a writer, and I find that that's like so powerful.
everybody in
Where it's
marketing does.
Yeah, exactly. So um, yeah, I love these sessions. So thanks for hosting.
Yeah, man. Oh, did I deny you, Chris? Did I press the wrong button? That's funny if I did. Um, yeah, we're hanging out. Chris is in the tunnel. He's about to come up. We'll see what he has to say whenever he finally connects. In the meantime, stuff I'm working on. Working on a new video as well. I've got a little over 5 minutes of raw footage. What's the problem? Why can't you connect? I don't understand. Oh, he's going to reboot for some reason. Heidi has seen it, and Chris has seen it. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's just infantile at this point. It's just there's nothing there, in the grand scheme of things. But I would say like there's two other considerable writing projects that I'm going to be getting after, trying to wrap up or have been considering a little bit. So for volume 3 of the national park stuff, I put out video series for those as well. So going back to what I was talking about with the audiobook readings, that performance becomes the audiobook, but that also becomes the VO for the films too. And then I write the music for that as well. So that's going to be, something that I don't have to like focus on, trying to write all this music and like compose it or score these films in some capacity. I'm not going to do them as AI because that's just not really compelling to me. I don't mind doing that every once in a while to toss some stuff up, but it's not really what I want to do. So, and actually that's funny too, because Chris and I have been working on a preview trailer for a project that we've been doing, and he put together some music with AI, and then I was like, this actually needs a little bit of something. So I ended up dumping it into DAW and then adding some additional instrumentation to it to kind of flesh it out a little bit more. The other thing I've got going on is a short story that I intend to release in this spring, and I'm like a little over 2/3 of the way there. Once I get the National Parks Volume 3 out and kind of wrapped up, then I'll shift gears into getting that completed, because I really wanted to have a first draft done by the end of the year. And that's not to say that it won't happen, but I am a little bit behind my monthly goals, my monthly production goals that I was hoping to get knocked out each month. Chris, you're up here. You're hanging out. What are you doing? What's happening? How are you?
I'm okay. I'm facing forward, and I'm currently staring at Premiere with that trailer. And yeah, man, it's hard. Schedules and shit like that. It's a really difficult thing to keep up, especially because life happens, other projects happen, client work, all that shit. So that's why it's good to have spaces to talk about that shit. It's also good to be kind of open to how other people's workflows are, because you got to try at least. And it's a space that if you're not trying, that's when you're failing. That's the worst way to fail, is to just not even try. So that's why I'm glad anything we get to put together, however we fucking do it. Anytime I see you try something new, it's always fucking refreshing.
I'm a hack. I'm gonna be honest with you. I just I come up with something and then I just brute force it. You know what I mean? Fuck it.
You sound like that kind of guy, especially when I'm like, hey, I got to finish this video. You're like, Jesus, God, just finish it. Just get it over with.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, but you know, some things take some finesse. You
They
know,
do.
there's a little bit of finesse. But
Yeah.
you know, I think it's all about which way you feel about a project like that. Honestly, where that helped me was the ones I really didn't care much about, and I was just kind of like just doing it trying to be a perfectionist for the sake of doing it, you know. And that's something that it was refreshing for that. Like Punk Love, I really didn't care about very much, and I remember hearing from you, and I'm just like, yeah, why am I spending so much time on this? You know, I should just get it out of the door. Especially by the time I had put it out, like the technology had moved so much further along that it was totally irrelevant. And when I had made it, it was almost cutting edge of where we were. You know, so it's crazy, and it's only a couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you want to talk about the trailer, or maybe not necessarily the trailer itself, but the creative process of that? I'm open to that, but only if you want to. I don't care, you know.
Yeah,
Because I mean, we're going to put it out anyway, so people will see it ultimately.
oh yeah, and it's small enough room. If everyone here talked about it, it'd be more than when we release it probably. I'm hoping not, but you know the way these days work, you never know. For this, the idea of the trailer was to try and take these ideas that are not exactly finished and try and get them into something that at least gets to the core of what they are. And so, you know, for me, there were parts of the sequences of my stuff that's in there that's not necessarily going to be in the final cut, but it gets the idea across. And there's a lot of films that did this, and you know, they were like kind of giving shit for it because of the end result, like the film looked totally different. But in reality, there's a lot of reasons why you would do that, you know. And I think that's something that you got to really find a way to tell as much of the story as will be alluring. And so, you know, what I did was after watching it, all the clips we have a bunch of times, I just really kind of got to this point where I was like, there's the story here is kind of like, you know, it's kind of jumbled anyway. So let me see what just kind of fits together visually. And then when you came in to look at where we were at and gave it a little more context to story, it did improve it. And then by just, you know, by almost going out of the AI, we're able to make the soundtrack just that much stronger, where it was probably like 30% there. And then when you came in, we started really like fucking with it, it became 100% there. And like, I feel so strongly about the way that came out. And, you know, the other thing that was like, kind of like what Blacklight was talking about, like really finding the source material for what you want to make. Like, I never really realized how much the 80s and movies in the 80s have an effect on me. But then, like, I'm starting to like what I make, and I'm like, wow, this is like some John Carpenter sounding shit. And this looks so much like, you know, the stuff that they would like, you know, Never Ending Story and, you know, all these things that I remember from being a kid, and how I'm really regurgitating so much of that, except for the Artax scene, because I would never do that to another human being for as long as I live. But everything else, though, it's all there, you know. And I think that whole process of really going back to your roots for inspiration it's really fucking artistically like freeing.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because like I didn't know what you were gonna pick in terms of the clips, so I was like, oh, who knows what I'm gonna see when I actually watch this thing. I knew that if you use the clips that I gave you, like I only gave you a couple, so there was a very limited set. But again, maybe they didn't make the cut, you know, who knows? So then once you tossed in some of the other stuff together, I was like, okay, yeah, I see a narrative here. I can see an arc a little bit. And then with the sound design stuff, like just being able to get that to do a little bit more to imply more on the trajectory of like what we are actually trying to make with the film ultimately, that seemed it seemed like a good opportunity to, and keep it like real basic, real stripped down. So hopefully that'll come out on like the next couple of days or so, or if not this week, then shortly thereafter, I would assume. No.
Oh yeah, well, as soon as I get this thumbs up from you on the latest one, I'm sending this over and hopefully have this premiere at the festival, because they'll be putting it on the DCP cut and at least be on one of the screens one of the nights.
Yeah.
So it'll be on the big screen too, which I did a pre DCP cut, and just to see what it would look like on a 2K screen. Fucking shit was wild. It was so different when it converts to this higher bit rate, and you have to like get a special player to run it, and the way the player works is really funky. So it's one of those things that I knew this was very much reminiscent of how it is to fucking set this up in a projector room. So once I saw what it looked like there, I was like, this is giving me that feeling, that same like in theater, don't know what the fuck I'm about to watch type of feeling. And then as far as the clips, I had rearranged that probably 6 times before I was just like, this is the cadence I'm looking for. At least like these specific vignettes on what's going on. And, that's really where everything kind of came into shape, and that's where I was like, all right. And it's even influencing kind of things I want to do in the full film, because there are ways I think we can bring scenes, that are already in play, already in stream, kind of back and, bring them back into the foreground almost. And then also when they do come to the foreground, how they do.
Yeah, I dig it. Yeah, for folks hanging out, Nick, you've been up here before. If you want to come up, raise your hand. I'll grab you. We're just hanging out. We were just talking with Blacklight about the film series he's been doing over the course of this month. He's got just a slew of videos out. If you haven't seen any of that stuff, have a look. Chris and I have been working on a short film with our group that will come out at some point in the future. No release date anywhere on the calendar currently, but luckily we are going to be putting out a preview trailer. The script is fundamentally written, so that has been, we've got that in place, and we've developed a load of assets for creating the film. We've done a lot of tests. We, in fact, have some footage for it, not only between he and I, but Neil has pounded out just a slew of stuff, and like he's a metric light year ahead of us in terms of the work that he's done. We got to catch up. We've, dragged our feet perhaps on that stuff, but it'll see the light of day at some point. I'm very confident of that, because it's something that we've talked about really since kind of the inception of the group, and given how much everybody does, and then life and commitments to the real world, you kind of have to have a hand in both sides so that you can get stuff done and not upset the people around you. So it'll happen at some point, and maybe there'll be some additional trailers that we'll put out along the way as we get a little bit more material cobbled together, as it turns out.
Oh, for sure. And I think, this is the thing. I always want to say that what we do as the Gorillas is, I would love for anyone to like try and interact with how we do things. And, if they want something done, we could always try and work something out. But it's also about, anybody who's looking to do any type of story where they want to put it out should always be considering the transmedia part of it. Because like sticking with one media is great, and it's all there's an audience there, but there's an audience elsewhere too that would love this type of material, and even if it's just about like making images and stuff, and not even AI, just in general, like just working in that realm to understand that the world is a very, very multimedia type of world. And that's why, any author who I've met who's just not even considering video at all, Because I mean, it's not even like there's AI, which is like the stupidest, easy way to like make some really high production stuff. But even like just a step above that, like I was shooting on a camera to my, to have and to put through Gen 3. And like even that was really awesome. It was just cool to do. Yeah. So like there's other levels, you know.
Absolutely. And the thing too is like because the stuff I do, you know, I'm already kind of seeing different ways of applying the material, you know. I'm not going to hold anybody to anything or promise anything, but at the same time, you know, I see those options along the way. Nick, you got your hand up. What's going on? How are you? It's been a while since we talked.
Yeah. Good afternoon. How you doing?
Yeah. No complaints. Just hanging out. Went to the beach.
Excellent. I had a question. The films that you guys are talking about creating, are these AI generated, or I heard Chris mention using a camera. I know that, Michael, you've been doing some AI, I'll call it video. So I was just curious to learn if you're doing this, like taking the next step here.
So I would say things are always kind of mixed along the way. So let's say Neil, who's not here today, you know, we won't speak ill of him. He can't defend himself, but he created a bunch of assets, right? And he used AI to do that. But we can't just like slap this stuff together just willy-nilly and it works day one. So like he was creating a bunch of standalone assets. Then I was grabbing them and putting them into Photoshop and cleaning them up a bunch and isolating all these elements so that we could have a layered document to where we could actually interact with the components and move them if we needed to, or set them in different locations, or kind of clean up little mistakes. I did a little bit of that as well on the different assets, or combining assets to create a scene. Stuff like that. So like there are, gosh, I don't know. Let's say there's like a dozen or 15 assets that have like been cleaned up and played with. Some of them are characters. Some of them are environments. Some of them are like set dressing. A bunch of different stuff.
Are these digital assets or real? Like real setting?
They're digital assets, right? But now, like what Chris was talking about, he was filming himself to basically operate as a trigger for like AI generation, which we can actually, in different ways, we can actually do that with these assets in Character Animator, or we can do that with other tools like Runway. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about it.
Is it almost, forgive my ignorance, but like a CGI green screen for the everyman? Like now AI is able to supplement. Okay.
Yeah. Basically, if you wanted to make anything, like I sat in my backyard because I had the best lighting that day. And I essentially just shot myself running through a bunch of lines of dialogue that I had for the film. And then I was able to remove the background without needing to do a key on a green screen, which was really great. And it came out really good. And then that got to run through an AI generation. And I probably went through like 15 different looks. And some of them are exceptionally like tight. They're beautiful, like very, very, very clean Pixar. Some of them are like, they just changed my race entirely. Like I went from being a blonde white guy to like basically a Pakistani looking dude. And it was interesting because one of those things where if you are somebody who is like, I'm a trained actor, it's great to have these things in my story because now I could just make them happen. But, you know, it's one of those things also, if I didn't want to have it be just all AI, I could use this asset of me being filmed and then change the background to anything. And it'd be just seamless. It wouldn't look perfect. I'd probably have to do a lot more compositing if I wanted to do it in like After Effects, but it's very close, very close.
So first of all, I would say I'm very interested, excited to watch whatever finished product is that you're working on. I just followed you. I'm going to try to keep tabs on this, and I'm sure Michael, you'll share this as well whenever you see it. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say, I feel like this is a huge opportunity. Like a whole new world is being created to sort of break the Hollywood monopoly on storytelling. Like if you could get a really compelling story in video format and start to just kind of, guerrilla send it out into the wild and get it to spread and catch. I mean, it's all really exciting. And I guess I would otherwise just say, I want to stay in touch with you guys. I have a story, Michael, I've mentioned this in the past. It's my fantasy epic novel that I've been working on. And Chris, you mentioned earlier, novel as a format, it's kind of limited. The audience might not be big. And this story is like 750 pages. And, I understand that because of that, my audience is going to be very limited, but it's a very good story that would make a really good, I don't know, like mini series, you think like Netflix mini series, like 3 seasons, like 5 episodes, whatever per season or whatever, or like 3 movies. I don't know. So I've got material that I think would be good in this kind of format, and I'm completely helpless when it comes to the technology side of things. I'm very helpful when it comes to just putting stories together, though, anyways, like themes and characters. So I just wanted to float that out there. Maybe we can collaborate someday. But anyways, first and foremost, I'm just excited to see where this technology goes and to see what you're going to put out here, Chris.
So to direct traffic a little bit, there's a link above. I just put it up there. It's all the way to the left in the nest, but that's a link to our Discord server. So you are welcome to join. You can come and hang out with us in our private Discord server, and you can talk shop. We also host a Thursday space and talk tools, talk distribution platforms, talk with artists about the work that they're doing in film and AI film and generative and whatever else, that kind of might be on the peripherals of that conversation. But yeah, if you want to peek in there, you can see the internal crew members, like each one of us has a channel, and you can go through and get a look at the stuff that they've created, and maybe you dial into somebody's style, or you just want to know how something was accomplished, and they'd be more than happy, as well as myself and Chris would be more than happy to answer those questions or reflect on your ideas and comments. Chris, you got your hand up. Nick, you unmiked. I'll let you go first since you're unmiking and we're talking to you.
I was just going to say, I'm going to start to listen again. I got to get back to my desk at work. I'm just going to start to listen here, but thank you. I'll check this Discord out.
Yeah, for sure. Chris, you got your hand raised. You don't have to do that.
Listen, decorum. I'm not. This isn't my type of space. Decorum. Anyway, So the thing about it is, I think something that needs to kind of change is the understanding of what you would want to do with any IP to put it out into the world. I think the reason why is because the effect that I think is missing, and I think what they cannot replicate very easily, is it needs to be kind of a pyramid effect where it builds itself from the widest base to the smallest top, where your audience gets to the top and they get the prize, which is like the ultimate experience of whatever it is. And at the bottom, it's where you have the widest distribution, but it's always just it's the most weight bearing. It's the one that has to carry the most. And the reason why is because that's where you got to get your audience to get into and get interested in your product. So whereas like something that has 750 pages, I would do similar to, and this is done in film a lot. One of the best examples of this is Pulp Fiction. If you watch Pulp Fiction, the scene with Jules and what you would call it? Vincent Vega. Yeah, Vince and Jules, when they walk up on the guys in the room and, Jules does that whole speech, that was the shot that they filmed that first before they even had the movie. They filmed that and then gave that to like Danny DeVito and all these other people who then financed the rest of the film. And if you notice in that scene, there's a gun that goes off without a flash. And it's because they just never added it back in. They just kind of like made it just work. And it just kind of worked. It's if you analyze the scene, it's janky as fuck. But the thing about it is it got people interested. And I think on a grander scheme with where we are now, that is the model to kind of choose. But I think instead of going to a very select group of people, you go to as broad an audience as possible. And then you build that experience tighter around whoever's really a fan. I think a lot of people, they tend to like top out, but it sucks because you're not going to get your audience is going to get the experience. And then number two is that the traction is really limited because you're only doing one big thing. And if it doesn't splash, like you're fucked, So I think something like with your project is I would choose vignettes and something that's really iconic and like start to traipse those out into the world and then see how that does. And then see if you can get engagement that way and then make something bigger. And, you could do a lot of this stuff for relatively cheap, if not free. So it's kind of a good way to balance out how the space works is doing it this way instead of trying to like push towards a big IP project and you don't get there. And then what happens is like you get burnt out, whereas if you're just knocking them in, you're just doing first, like first base hits, just knocking first base hits out. You get enough of those, you get a home run.
Small ball, play the small ball, no big deal.
Yeah, I don't know many baseball analogies, so you did a better one than I did.
Yeah, small ball. It's where, you get singles and doubles, you get people on base, you knock them around the bases, you drive them home, and it still puts a run on the board. Everything doesn't have to be a home run. If you hit a home run, that's fantastic. We all want that. That's the big show. But, in the meantime, you play small ball, you still get some runs on the board, That's what I think you're saying. That's how I would equate it. That's my analogy for it. That's I would say a lot of what I do. Additionally, like there's things. This is something I was talking about maybe a couple of weeks ago, or maybe in the space that Heidi and I co-host together on Tuesdays for Writer's Block. Is like, or maybe I just told her. I don't even know. Maybe I didn't tell anybody. And if you've heard this before, bear with me. I'm going to say it again. So I was looking through all of these statistics on books, right? My books, the sales and the platforms and the distribution and all that. And I've been doing this since the beginning of the year, gathering this stuff up and putting it in a spreadsheet so that I can see, what's going on at a glance. More comprehensively. And the thing that I learned immediately as soon as I started doing that was like the marketing books that I have out have performed really beyond what I had anticipated or maybe had understood from before I did this spreadsheet. That was nice. That was good. I had also been thinking that the national parks books had been underperforming for, I like the project. I do it. I'm going to keep doing it. But I had thought that it was underperforming. But when I look at the statistics, it really hasn't. And additionally, in terms of the profitability of that project, has competed with the other stuff. So that was also a surprise. And it's, again, like none of these projects are McDonald's. You know what I mean? I don't have any McDonald's. But at the same time, like, I guess what I would say here to extend the small ball analogy into the fast food analogy is if I have enough Hardee's locations, then I'm still I'm doing all right. And that's what I think we all should be kind of striving for as we're kind of building up our book, building up our catalog, building up our offerings and our skills, and what used to be in the music industry, like artist and repertoire. We have these skills and we have our catalog, our assets, our material, our IP, the things that we offer up to people when they find us. And that, I think, is really important, because whenever you find a new market to distribute your stuff, you got to have the stuff to be able to distribute it through the market. Chris, what's up?
Yeah, well, actually, I was thinking about this. We were supposed to have this space yesterday with Liana, and we ended up not. And it was one of the things I was thinking about was how, like, everyone worships Kubrick and talks about how he had these like 300 take scenes and stuff like that. But you got to realize is that Kubrick had to get to that, and he was playing at the top of his game when he was doing that. Hitchcock, same way. Hitchcock came up in theater, and then when film came around for him to enter into that field, like he did it expeditiously. But he also was known for having these ridiculously high take scenes, to the point that, I mean, whatchamacallit, Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, Janet Leigh, was like, said she had like PTSD from the shower scene that they did in Psycho, because each one of those angles was done like in some cases 100 times, 200 times a piece. And they had done these over and over again to perfection. But the thing about it is everyone kind of looks at that and doesn't look at the chance before, where if he didn't have enough film to do that, it didn't happen. And he would be fighting with people to try and buy more film and stuff like that. We're at a point now where we are more guilty of trying to perfect something, and we have all the options to like do it. And that's why we really need to get to the point of like understanding what our goal is, and really just getting there in the fastest way possible, but doing it with like the love of whatever the image is or whatever the story is that you want to make. And like love of story is something that the reason why I think writers could really kill it is because nobody loves story more than writers. And it's one of those things that if done correctly, there's so many ways of making your audience like enjoy your product more, enjoy your work more. And I don't know, it's just kind of the idea is like it really just needs to yield to just a new paradigm. Like it's a very short attention span, so it's one of those things where don't spend enough time on it till you have to, type of thing. And because there's always another story to tell. So I don't know where I was going to go with that point, but I had something. I totally fucking missed it.
Well, we were talking about, I was talking about having your catalog, having that in order before you do distribution. Basically, the old analogy that I go back to, it's like, don't go on tour if you don't have merch. That's, I think, where we were at.
Yeah, and that's 100% too. You know, it's one of those things where at this point, the reason why I would ever have a film in a theater is if I knew enough people were going to buy the tickets. Because as we're seeing in the major film industry, that's not a thing anymore. Like you can't rely on the IP totally anymore. You need something that feeds your audience. You know, it's like Terrifier 3 is breaking records now, and they've been feeding their audience for almost like 10 years, probably longer than that. I forgot when Terrifier 1 came out. It might have been 2004 or something. But, you know, they've been feeding their audience. The same thing with Dune. Dune, they did it a very different way. They fed their audience in a more commercial sense, but they had a popcorn bucket that's like got very popular for, you know, of course, memery. But the thing about it is it engaged that audience. It dragged into that muck of what was like what people would buy.
I don't know that that might be the other way around. I don't know that the Dune audience was so into the bucket so much as the bucket had such a high FQ that it ended up attaining meme status. If it didn't have that it just astronomically high FQ ratio, then it might be a different story. So, while Dune does have a built-in audience, I'm not sure that it's 100% like 1-to-1.
The only reason why I would say that the bucket had something to do with it is 2 other IPs afterward did the exact same thing. And they never do that unless there's something there. And the engagement level of any of them has been like Ghostbusters did it afterward, and then Deadpool and Wolverine did it after that. And it's all this idea of that was like the big thing about that whole idea. Was like one of the marketing items was this. And I'm not saying it got the entire audience, but what it did was it engaged a part of the audience that the only thing I would argue with that is it engaged the part of the audience that not necessarily is the Dune audience. It engaged the fringe and the outer fringe, which is a lot of money. It's not like, and this is what I think kind of gets lost these days with every creative, is the fringe is really where, if you can ride that wave properly, you can gain so much in what you do, just not even in money wise, just in like just enjoyment of what you work with, that you can just engage in a way that's not totally locked in, and it's so much more freeing, so that's what I mean. It's something where it engages a different part of the audience, and it's something we really do need to consider.
What I'm hearing is we need to think about a popcorn bucket design for our film. I'm trying to think of something now, with FQ. But like in general, we typically go an hour here. I'm not cutting anybody off. There's people hanging out. You've been hanging out for a while. If you have burning comments, desires, needs, that just absolutely must be expressed here on stage, this is your chance. Do raise your hand. I will bring you up, and you can then put these thoughts into the air here amongst friends. Otherwise, are there any last thoughts from the folks that are on stage? Nick, I know you're busy. You got work. You're talking maybe to coworkers. They're not necessarily the audience for vampires. Chris, you've been hanging out for a while, but maybe there's something that you needed to say that you haven't yet. And this is your chance here today.
I mean, I don't know. Basically, I mean, in what context? I'm sorry. I kind of got lost there for a second.
We're wrapping up the show.
Oh, I gotcha. All right. Yeah. Just want to say that tomorrow at 12 o'clock Eastern, we're running the space about the AI Film 3 Festival. Definitely check that out. It's up top. And yeah, just generally, if you're a writer, just try stuff out, try tools, ask people that in the space, see what's what. It's the best way to do it, through a fucking conversation. But yeah, man, and also thank you for having the space, bro. It's always good.
Hey, thanks for coming and hanging out. Yeah, tomorrow the space that we have for Thursdays is above in the nest. Do RSVP, even if you can't make it. Toss us a click. It's not going to hurt anybody. You'll get a notification even if you can't come. That's okay. People see it. This data's there.
We still love you.
Yeah, that's all right. Nick, are you on a call? Do you have any last thoughts, comments? You're just waving. He's there. Well, hey, this has been a pleasure. I do appreciate you taking the time. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk again before too long.